Good evening, everybody. Tonight, we're going to talk about, I'm going to present to you a primer on Assembly Bill 481, which governs the acquisition, funding, and justification for military equipment in the state of California by law enforcement agencies. This can include county agencies, city agencies, school district agencies, community agencies, so for example, BART, sheriffs, police departments throughout the state. Additionally, I'll give an update on where our current draft policy, which is required by Assembly Bill 481, our draft policy on the use, acquisition, and funding of military equipment here in Los Altos, our assessment of that, how we went through that assessment, and what the assessment has told us in terms of some good things in our policy and some missing things in our policy, and also some things that need to improve to satisfy the objectives that we hold in our city. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Give me one moment, please. Go ahead and put this in presentation mode. Great. Okay, so I've titled this AB 481 primer, and we're moving our local military equipment policy. We shorten up that name, call it MEUP. It's policy 709 in our police code, and we want to move that towards compliance with the spirit and letter of the law being Assembly Bill 481. I'll go ahead and start with a very tiny civics lesson about California law. All 49 of the 50 states, including California, they follow a precept of common law in terms of how it applies legal statute to its citizenry. This results in high value being placed on case law and judicial precedent. And that means that laws are constantly evolving. They can be appealed, they can be refined, they can be eliminated, they can be added. And this is very much a part of the culture of the United States. There is one state, Louisiana, that does not conform to that. They use a basic form, what's called civil law. What civil law does is it's completely reliant on codification of statutes, and then those statutes are almost impossible to change. And it's very, very code oriented, if you will. Additionally, all states in the United States, I believe that's true, virtually all states follow a sentiment of popular sovereignty, which is in line with the US Constitution. And what that means is that the people run the government. They may elect people to do it on their behalf. They may create laws that implement their will on their behalf, but the people do run the government. And that goes down to the lowest levels in our country. However, unlike most states, California is very explicit about this proclamation. They literally codify it into its laws. So for example, the Brown Act, which is our transparency and open meeting law in the state of California, it specifically states that, quote, the people of this state do not yield their sovereignty to the agencies which serve them. So it not only proclaims the public will, but it also says we may create instruments, but we will not serve those instruments. They serve us. AB 481, in fact, says, and it opens, the people of the state of California do enact as follows. It does not say its representatives. It does not say its legislature. It says the people of the state. Our state's legislative branch, whom we elect to create laws for us, is comprised of the Senate with 40 members and the Assembly 80 members. Now, contrary to popular belief, and unlike our federal structure, governmental structure, there is no hierarchy between the Senate and the Assembly. They are equal members in the sense that they do not, one is not above the other, and bills can originate in either house but they do ultimately have to be approved by several legislative review committees and then by both houses. Once both houses have approved a bill, and that bill retains the nomenclature of its origin, so AB means Assembly Bill, SB means Senate Bill, then those bills become law of the state once they're approved by the governor, or if the governor vetoes, that veto being overturned by both houses. Once that happens, the bill is codified into our California codes, which is our big law book. So Assembly Bill 481 was passed into law September 20th, 2021. So how did we get here? Why does this bill exist? I've divided this up into 2 slides. In the earlier years, the next one will be more recent years. It pretty much started in 1944. The federal government established the Surplus Property Act. And the focus then was, wow, the war is winding down. We've got all of these supplies. We've asked the public to sacrifice for many years in what they eat, what they wear, what materials they have available to them to do construction, to do manufacturing. We all know those stories. And now the war was winding down and there was this tremendous inventory of supplies. So the focus back then and the purpose of the act was to deliver some of these supplies at low or no cost to people so that they could use them in their homes, their towns, their cities. The focus was on things useful to people such as clothing, jeeps, containers, fuel, which was highly conserved during the war, tents, small abodes, things like that. That program went through various manifestations and names, but it pretty much ended in 1949. And things pretty much after that stayed it was kind of like a Wild West. There wasn't any real law governing the distribution of equipment, surplus equipment from the federal government. And so things kind of stalled. But then in 1990, as the presidency at the time really established this brand called the War on Drugs, they established the National Defense Authorization Act. I use the acronym NADA. Some people do. Other people don't like that acronym, even though it's accurate. But it was established in 1990, and the section 1208 of that act specifically targeted and enabled the distribution at no charge other than shipping of true military equipment in terms of weapons of war, if you will, to law enforcement agencies, civil law enforcement agencies for the explicit purpose of addressing the war on drugs. So you had to justify your need by saying that you had a problem in your agency such that the acquisition of these equipments would allow you to do your job better. And as we all know now, as time has passed and there have been novels and research and histories and movies about this, there was rampant corruption and discrimination that ensued in terms of disproportionate use, unfair acquisition, and simple fraud, if you will, in terms of people acquiring military equipment without having good justification for it. So NADA was then renewed and expanded, and this is where things got really interesting. It expanded into a new section called 1033, and that happened in 1997, 7 years later. And the troubling thing that happened at that point was that now the justification to acquire military equipment was not narrowed to the war on drugs. It basically, and it was, and I'm quoting from the act here, the act enabled the use of military equipment by law enforcement for all bona fide law enforcement purposes that assist in their arrest and apprehension mission. So it wasn't just about drugs or drug-related activities. It was for any kind of arrest and apprehension. And that spawned a flood. When it was glacial movement in terms of acquiring equipment before, now it became a flood. Within 10 years of that act being approved, the flood of acquisition just was insane. As of 1996, since 1996, ending in about 2020, when's the last time the research that I did ended. There have been 7 of military equipment transferred to law enforcement agencies. And as a result, the use of military equipment against protesters, by example, skyrocketed and continue to this day.